Saw Netflix, and now we have Lynnette Young. Oh, I hear some yays in the audience. So I guess some of you either know Lynnette or you've seen her speak before. She's a star speaker. She's spoken at many large events, and she's given a version of this talk elsewhere, but an abridged version from what I understand, so you get the full thing today. She has been a blogger since before probably the word blogging existed, and she's been doing this for a long time, so she has a lot of knowledge to impart. I really found it fascinating to know that she has 1.5 million followers on Google+. I don't know anybody who has even 100,000 followers on anything, so that's pretty fascinating, pretty amazing. Maybe she'll tell you about how that happened. And I guess that's enough intro, so let's bring up Lynnette, and round of applause for her.
Thank you for having me. I've spoken at Princeton Library quite a number of times over the years. Janie and I have been friends, we can't figure out how long now. It's just one of those things when you meet and then it just, your worlds blend together. So thank you very much for having me. Tonight's talk is based on something that I was actually asked to do last month at a large conference called New Media Expo. And the topic was presented to me by the owner of the conference, who I've known for a couple of years now, and he said, Lynette, can you explain to me, I want you to do a big keynote talk on why or how to become an overnight success. And I looked at him and I was a little disappointed because I'm like, I've been in this industry since 1989, how am I an overnight success? But you know, it's funny how that happens. So part of what this talk is really going to be about today is it's not going to be my typical, I'm going to get in front of a room and I'm going to teach you the 3 best mechanisms to go through and use Google+, because that's obviously my power platform right now. I'm going to talk about a little bit of stories and a little bit of history for me, and that's the 25 years, because it's about how long I've been doing this professionally. So in there's going to be some, hopefully, lessons learned, hopefully some ideas to spark your own interest about what you can pull from your past to present and grow your future. So I just redid my slides, so I'll see if I remember what the heck is in them. So a little bit about me, in case you don't know, and this is part of what the story is today, is I am a business owner, right? So I own a company called Purple Stripe Productions. Normally, my hair is purple. When I left corporate, you know, because I used to work up and down on Route 1, finance and pharma, oh my. My guarantee for not coming back to that space when I left in 2000 was to dye my hair purple, because there's no way that they would take me back if I had bright purple hair, right? Could you imagine me at Merrill Lynch with bright purple hair? It just wouldn't happen. But I've been on my own for quite some time, and during that time, you know, you reinvent yourself, so that's part of what the story is. I'm also a published author. My first book, Google Plus for Small Businesses, really not that exciting of a title. But that's pretty much what I work with. I work with small businesses, agencies, in-house, that kind of thing, to help them get to the next level, to mix that creativity and the technology, because that is my background. I consider myself a MarTech professional. I don't know if that word really exists or not. I've seen Marcom, but I say MarTech because I kind of a hybrid between marketing and technology. I like to disclose that I am not a programmer. So when people talk to me and I identify as a geek or a tech, and they go, well, what language? And I go, I don't program. And they're like, well, you're not a tech. And that's kind of a little bit of the issue that I have with the industry in general. I can get around WordPress pretty solid, but that's about it. I am a huge Google Plus fangirl, and part of the story today will be about why I am considered an overnight success in this platform and why it's just complete bunk. I speak a lot, and I am a geek. Total hardcore geek, and I'm raising 2 geeks in my household. One is 6, one is 12. So with this, I want to talk about the idea of an iceberg, right? So we saw in the first picture, an iceberg, and I would say don't Wikipedia this because my numbers aren't exact, is about 90% under the waterline. It's under the water, and only 10% of an iceberg is above. Titanic, we should know better than that, right? You don't always see what you're going to hit. With this idea of an iceberg, and it's always been this professional drive for me, that everything that I do is to build that 90% under the waterline, right? So that's the mantra that goes in my head every day when I get up, every day when I work with clients, every day when I tell them what they should, mentor them on what they should be doing. What are you doing to build your iceberg under the waterline? The more work you do under, the more the 10% is going to rise above, right? So you can't get more on top. You can't get more visible, more success, more whatever you're looking for. if you don't build your base. So that's really what my quarter century, holy cow, that sounds like a long time, my quarter century in this industry has been about. So the first story that I want to tell you is something about perception. I work in social media, right? So this digital marketing online and the technology behind it, or that runs parallel with it. My background is actually as a network engineer. I started working professionally in tech in 1989 because I had just gotten out of high school and I didn't necessarily have the money yet for college. My original plan was to go to college for mortuary science, and I did for a little while because I was petrified of people, right? So like, where's better to work than a morgue, right? If you're afraid of people, if they're dead, it's okay. So I did that for a little bit, but then I had part-time jobs and such, and wound up literally the weekend after I graduated high school. I was trying to make money to go to college, and I installed my first token ring network, right? So that's how far back I go. I still have beacon errors in my dreams every once in a while, if anyone goes that far back. But this was my base, and I figured, well, I'm just going to work in tech so I can make some money, so I could go to college, so I could stay away from people. And that didn't quite work out for me, so I said, well, what's the other option? I'm petrified of people. I had zero social skills, and this is what I do for a living now. And technology, right? Because I'm going to work at a computer, not talk to people. It's going to be awesome. Well, now this is where we all are, right? Tech is people at this point. I went through a couple jobs, and when I decided that I was going to make technology and working in MIS my career, I began to work for a company, wound up dropping out of college because the courses that they taught me in college were not nearly as advanced as what I was doing for myself in my job. I was 23 years old at this point. I had gone through, I think that was my second or third job at that point, because I quickly outgrew them. 23 years old, working in a department of 40 people, all programmers. There were 3 women, myself and 2 secretaries or admins. And that's what we did. And I was a network engineer. I took them from token ring to Ethernet, and that was so exciting for me. And we were on, I was a server admin. We had NetWare. It was great. I was all certified. I thought this was my path to success. What I didn't realize is that what I was building for myself was this perception of what other people thought of me. So here I am, 22, 23 years old. I'm working in a company, and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm doing employee reviews, and I'm noticing, because I'm an idiot at this point, to be completely honest, that everyone that reports to me is making more money than me. They don't all have college degrees, so it wasn't that. And they all had better titles. I was like, well, this is ridiculous. And me being 23 and stupid and arrogant, I march right into my boss's office, right? March in, and I'm like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to get business cards with some kind of real fancy VP title on it, right? At that point, I had already had another job offer for nearly double my salary. But I felt a sense of loyalty to this company. They had really taken me in when I started kind of like at the help desk, and I quickly wound up managing all of these programmers, and I wasn't a coder myself. Worked it through that way. So I said, something's not right here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to march myself in. I'm going to demand a new business card. So I go in and I sit down. And my boss had this beautiful mahogany desk with a glass top, and it was, he looked like an attorney's office with all the books behind him and everything. So I sit down. I have my resignation letter, I should tell you, in my hand, just in case things go bad, right? So I'm not willing to leave this job that I'm at because I feel a sense of loyalty and I feel like I owe them something for working there. So even though the job's going to pay me almost double what I'm making, I'm not going to leave. If he gives me a new business card with a better title on it, not even asking for more money, then I'm going to stay, just in case I've got my backup plan. So I go in there and I sit down and I tell him, this is what's going on. I've done all the reviews. I've been nothing but stellar in my position here. I would like new business cards with a better title on it. And he says, sit down. It's okay, get new business cards. And he goes, do you know how arrogant you are walking in here and and I wasn't really arrogant. I was being polite about it, but 20 years in hindsight, I'll say I was arrogant. And he said, do you know how arrogant you are? You walk in here and you think you're better than everybody else because you want a title that's better than them? Do you know how much business cards cost to print? I was like, what? He's like, do you know what, he had this big brass P, I'll never forget it. In fact, one day I'm gonna buy one for myself, like a bookend, and he had this big brass P, it must have weighed about 10 pounds, sitting on his desk, and he goes, do you know what that P stands for? I said, Paul, because it's his first name. He said, no. The P stands for perception, Lynette. This is still to this day, 20 years later, the best lesson I've ever learned in my life. He goes, the perception is of you that you are better than other people, that you feel more entitled and you feel elite because you think your name should be on a card with, a better title and such. And I felt horrible. And I sat there literally with tears coming down my eyes, and I was like, well, he must think I haven't done a good enough job here at this position yet, because the perception that he has of me is that I'm not fully baked yet, like I'm not a good enough professional or not good enough at my job, that I'm not entitled to have a better title and things like that. I said, okay, so I'm sitting there in the chair crumpling up this resignation letter, because I'm like, I can't leave this job yet because I still have something to prove. How naive is that, right? Turns around to me and says, Lynette, you know what else that P stands for? I said, Paul, and he said, no. And he said the word, and I promised my husband I would never say the word in public, and I won't. But I will just say it is a female anatomy part. And he called that word to me, to my face, and leaned over his desk. And he called me that word. I won't even say it. And I was so enraged with him because he said, well, that's all you'll ever be, is a female in a dress, but he used that word. And he said, you will never make 1 penny more than I allow you to make. And you will never have a job title better than what I allow you to have, because you are only a woman in tech. I lost my mind. I picked up that brass P, and I know it weighs 10 pounds because I threw it. I threw it at him, and I'm embarrassed to say that it's not the first time that I've thrown something at someone that I work with. It's happened 3 times in my life. But I picked that up and I threw it at him because he had the audacity to tell me that it was his job to determine the perception of what other people thought of me, and he was only allowing me to be a certain type of person because that was his perception of me. Well, needless to say, I took that resignation letter, I threw it at him, walked myself out of the door, and that was the end of that job. I accepted the new position, and at the time it was up here at Merrill Lynch, and I went over to Merrill and I worked my way through the ranks there. But what he taught me about perception and self-perception and other people's perception of you is so crucial to still how I do business today, because I work on the social web, right? So like everything is about ego and perception of other people. It's at 10% above the waterline, right? So you go online, you have your resume, you put stuff out on Twitter, you put things out on Google+, you curate everything for what people, you want people to see about you. We only usually put the good stuff out, unless you're some of the people that I follow on Facebook that are complaining all the time. But think about that 10% that you put above the waterline, right? You do all this work every day, whatever, you curate what you're talking about, and you form other people's perception of you. So if you're talking about what you ate for lunch every day, well, that's people's perception of you, that you're out, you're a foodie and you're kind of cruising around. If you're talking about work things all the time, or posing, interesting questions, or helping people with solutions, that's what you're going to be perceived at. And it is very important for me in my line of work, or what I do, that people understand that you have to be well-rounded when you put yourself out there and this perception of others, because you control the initial perception of what people see you as, professionally and personally. So what Paul taught me before I walked out of his office, and I didn't give him stitches, but I'm still not too sure to this day, was that this matters. This matters professionally, this matters on the social web, this matters when we are doing work with interacting with other people, that we have to take control of the perception that people have of us. The funny thing is that you can put yourself out there, and this is why I love this quote, what people in the world think of you is really none of your business. Because if you put things online, or you interact with other people, or you go for a job and you get rejected from the job, anything like that, it's not about you really, it's you can do the very best that you can to put yourself out there. What their perception is sometimes based on baggage they have themselves, if they had a bad day, whatever, those kind of things. But I see a lot of people with the social web get hung up on what other people see them as. Well, I hope they think I'm successful. Well, I hope they think I'm top of my game, or I hope, I'm talking about enough stuff where someone will just, drop out of the sky and approach me for a job position or something like that. It doesn't happen, but you still have to be very mindful of what you're putting out there. The next thing is this idea of perseverance. And my career took me from that. I loved that job. I loved everything at that job except for that idiot in the corner office. But, I wound up working my way up the ranks, and I worked a lot of these companies on Route 1 up here, and I worked in the server rooms, and I was an engineer. That was my life, right? I loved computers, I loved networking. That was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. When my daughter was born in 2001, I decided, before that I was working, the Princeton area kind of had their fill of me, so I wound up in New York. And I had taken a little bit of time off right after my daughter was born, and I figured, well, okay, I've learned as much as I can possibly learn in the corporate world. Now I'm going to go out on my own, and I'm going to have my own business. And back then I was like, I'm going to start this marketing technology firm. Like, people don't even know what the hell I do now, let alone 11 years ago, right? Went through all these things, saved up all this money, because I was consulting, and it was just wonderful, and I had this whole perfect life planned. And my daughter was born, and she was 1 month old. And my husband and I were both working. Well, I had taken my own self-imposed maternity leave. My husband was still working in Manhattan. And 9/11 hit, right, a month and a day after my daughter was born. And that morning I had begged my husband to stay home from work because my daughter, she was insane. She was colicky, she cried all the time. I had no idea what was going on with this first child of mine. So he stayed home, and he was pretty ticked about it, because as a consultant you live by hours, right? That was September 11th. She'll still tell us to this day that she saved her father's life, which is God's honest truth. Because he should have been at work that day, and where his building is now where the Freedom Towers was constructed in Manhattan. So if she hadn't stayed home, that would have been the end of it. And so I talk about this story with this idea of perseverance. When that happened, my husband no longer had a job. I sure as hell wasn't going back to Manhattan. I really think I had a bit of a nervous breakdown after, everything had happened. And I said, I'm going to take all my money that I saved, and I'm going to open a scrapbook store. And my husband's like, but you're a tech. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I want nothing to do with technology any longer. I want people. I want to flip completely on the other side. So I took all of my money, all of our money, and I opened a scrapbook store. And I can tell you right now that I am a horrible retail store owner. Do not give me inventory, do not let me run a point of sale system. I'm horrible at it. I'm really good at helping other people, but I'm horrible at it myself. But this idea of perseverance, and I said I need to disconnect from everything that we saw leading up to that point, right? So it was technology, we were consultants. I worked at Universal Music. So, everything was, booze and drugs, not me, but booze and drugs, and it was just great. And I was like, this is IT, this is amazing, I'm in a record company. And it all stopped. And I completely spun around on my heels, and I said, I have to do what I have to do to survive right now. I need to do what I need to do to survive for my family, and I need to connect emotionally to other people. So I opened this scrapbook store over in Hamilton, New Jersey. Sunk all our money in it in 3 years. That was gone. And decided that this was going to be our new life, right? I was going to be a little shop owner, and I wasn't going to work in IT any longer. As my store is failing, because like I said, I suck at running a retail store, there were 3 women that came into my store, and we used to have these events called a crop, and I'll call it like a sewing circle, but women used to come in, we'd stay late at night and drink and eat M&Ms and work on our crafting projects. And there were 3 women that came in, and it was a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. And the daughter was my age at the point, so you could see where the generations go from there. And all 3 of them were working on scrapbooks. And of course, I'd be interested, and I'd say, meanwhile, I'm like, the bill collectors are calling, or, I don't know how to balance QuickBooks or whatever I'm doing, and my store is crumbling around me. And I still take the time out and I talk to these people, and they taught me this idea of perseverance. All three women were either currently or very recently formerly in breast cancer treatment, right? The grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, the mother and the daughter were in treatment together. They would go to chemo together. And they would come to my store every other week and they would build their books, right? With pictures and memories and stuff, because they're like, if we die tomorrow, which is very likely, we want something to leave to other people. We want our memories to persevere through everything else. They didn't come in feeling sad for themselves or anything like that. They would laugh and have a good time. I was like, well, that's amazing. Like, that's a really different way of looking at it. Here I am feeling sorry for myself because I just blew all of our money, and I've been out of the job market for 3 years now. And the industry is different because the dot-com bubble wound up going not too long after that and everything. And there's no place for my husband and I on the world, as far as we were concerned, to work in tech anymore. And these three women taught me that you can still go back no matter how bad things are, and you can still make it through. And one of the ladies came back a couple weeks later and said that she had lost her book, right, this physical book. And I said, well, why don't you blog? Because if you put everything online, it's, you can't lose it, right? You back it up, it's great. So from there, I started back into my own industry where we are now. But this idea of persevering through whatever pain point that you have and finding good out of it. If I wound up never moving forward or wallowing in the fact that, my industry had fallen around me, or, the market was different and there's no more token ring, I could have stayed where I was and stayed stagnant. I would not be around. You have to kind of push through everything. You have to take those ideas of what you learned, and I learned great people management skills. I learned great technical technical architecture and systems architecture through all of those jobs that I had, the career that I had, and I decided to take that back. So after I dumped $100,000 into the store, and that was gone, I went back into the marketplace, but now I focused on outside of the firewall, no more corporate, work with small, medium-sized businesses. But what I realized with that is that what comes around goes around. I use this quote here, say, if you're going through hell, keep going, because it's the last place you want to stay. I see a lot of people right now, I work with them, I see them, I'm friends with them, they're in this weird place where they have to retool themselves professionally, or the language they used is falling out of fashion, or whatever we have. I was talking to somebody before this, my father-in-law was a COBOL programmer. And when COBOL fell out of fashion and other things came up, he was like, well, forget it, I'm not learning anything new. Well, he hasn't been employed in like 20 years, I can tell you that. It's evolve or die. So, people can go through and want to say, poor me, or want to say, well, I want things to be back the way that they should be. I want things to be when I was on top of the hill. When I was king of the hill, that kind of thing. And especially this industry, I'm really, really heartfelt about the idea that we have to evolve all the time. Especially because I work with social technologies. I got in a little bit of a pissing match today, I'll be honest with you, with someone online about how they just want to stay in Facebook. And when I realized the company, I have a credit card in my wallet from the company that this is, how resistant they were to change. They weren't persevering with the times, right? They weren't going with the times. They wanted the way things were. They were literally lamenting over the loss of MySpace because they had spent so much money in it. And I literally just sat on the desk and banged my head, and I'm like, you can't feel sorry for yourself because the hard work that you did is now gone. You have to get up the next morning and you have to do something else. You have to look around. If it isn't working anymore, you do something else. Because what is it? It's the Einstein quote. The definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I find that so much in this industry. If I did the same thing that I did 5 years ago, I'd be working in Second Life right now. Right? So you remember Second Life? No. I also did, I was a MySpace queen. I had, Coca-Cola in there, and I was like, if I still sat around crying about the fact that what I was so good at isn't popular anymore, I wouldn't have a job right now, I wouldn't have a career, I wouldn't do all these other things. And it becomes so difficult in this industry, I feel, because I've been a part of it for so long, that it's our way or no way. It's Java or .NET. It's like everybody picks a side, right? It doesn't have to be that way, but I guess what I'm saying here is this idea of perseverance. You have to go through, you have to move forward, because sharks swim. If they don't swim, they sink, right? So the last idea here, so I left corporate. In 96, 97, I started moonlighting on my own, and then once the whole Y2K thing came and they actually thought the sky was going to fall, and after 9/11, I left. I left completely, and I haven't been back to corporate. Like I said, my hair is normally purple because I want them not to want to take me back. This idea of technology, especially in the space that I'm in the social web, the funny thing is now it's come around to people. And I see, and I use this quote, this guy, J.C. Hutchins. I actually put his Twitter handle here because he's the only of the three that I've quoted that's not dead. So you can tweet him. He says this phrase, like when people tick him off or people are being extra special, great human beings, he's like, people, man, people, for good or for bad. And I'm finding that a lot of, and I'm so guilty of it myself, that I started out in technology to hide from people, and now the one thing that I want to do and the one thing that I want to press forward for other people to do in technology is to work with people and not to forget that angle of it. We all get very busy, and I am married to a programmer. I get this, or architect, sorry, kill me if they call him a programmer. But this idea that we have to realize what we're doing impacts people's lives. Right? It's not just a 5-minute pitch up here for VC. It's not just a really cool widget. We shouldn't just be doing things because we can. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? This is the things that I want to kind of make you think about a little bit, about what do you do, and are you chasing money? Are you chasing technology? Are you chasing, growing your team? Are you chasing whatever you're chasing? I want you to stop and think, what does it have to do with people? You've got this great app that you're building, you've got this great phone, this great application, this great website, this whatever. What is it at the end of the day that you're going to do from all of the history that you bring from behind you? And I don't care if you're in college or high school, you still have history, so you're my age or older, we've got decades behind you. Your biggest asset is your ability to communicate with people. You do it with technology, you do it with yourself, it doesn't matter. What are you doing every day that's going to help somebody else's life? What's your product doing that's going to help somebody else's life? Are you making an app for the phone that's going to automatically color correct someone's photograph? Well, yeah, but how is it going to help someone's life? How is it going to help their job? So I believe strongly that if you remember why you're doing this, and it's not for the ones and the zeros and the bits and the bytes, that it is for working with people and helping them and being kind of a human forward, if you want to look at it that way. I think it's very important. Now, the work that I'm doing right now is almost all Google Plus based, right? And my 25-year journey of making sure that everything I do is building my base. It doesn't matter the tech, it doesn't matter the social platform. My experience transcends all of that, right? I can take my iceberg and I can move to the next place and I'm good. I still have experience. I still have my 90% underneath. So think about what you're doing, what you're building, things that you can pick from your past, skills, not tech, but skills that you can bring forward. If you're looking to do a different language, if you're looking to kind of pivot your business a bit, look at what you can bring from your past. The worst thing in the world, I think, that you can do is look at your resume and think that that's all that you're good for, is those bullet points that exist. It goes way beyond that. So the Google Plus thing. So when people meet me, or they have any inkling of this artificially inflated like ego that happens online, I go, wow, you're really famous, or I've had people nervous to talk to me and stuff because I've got 1.5 million followers. Well, I actually tried to look it up online to see what a picture of 1.5 million people looks like, and I couldn't even find a picture with that many people. It's kind of an unattainable number, but it doesn't matter that I have that many followers. It doesn't matter that I've got, whatever, anywhere, on any social platform. It doesn't matter that I have so many employees working for me, or there's so many. It doesn't matter. What it matters is the people that you can touch, and the people that you can work with, and the people that you can help. my job is to make sure professionally that people that are in marketing and technology-based companies don't forget about the people that they're serving online. I get calls all the time, you know, especially this guy I got in a fight with today. I hate getting sucked in by the trolls, but sometimes I do. This idea that Facebook or Twitter or blogging or whatever platform that they're on is the best because that's where their strengths are. And I'm like, if that's not where you're helping people, that's not where you're best served, right? So of course my expertise, I'm trying to bring them over to the Google Plus side of things. The reason why I see people fail there, businesses, brands, whatever, is because they forget that there's people on the other end of the keyboard. So what in your life can you do right now, tomorrow, because it's kind of late tonight, that you can do to help bring what you do to other people? So that's what I'd like you to think about, and if we're going to go out afterwards for drinks, I'd love to hear your idea about the one thing that you're going to do tomorrow that will bring your product or service to other people to help them. So, in parting, because I wanted to kind of make this kind of short and tight because there's a lot of really cool stuff that goes on with this group, is that when I be approached with people and they say, well, build your base, right? Build this 90%, build your experiences, your skills, everything else to rise up. Well, what happens when other people want to hop on and take a ride with your success, right? Because as someone that has some artificial sense of, you know, fame online, people contact me constantly. Businesses, bloggers, brands, you know, the bagel shop down the road. Can you help me out with Google Plus? You know, I'm sure you all get it. You know, it's like you go over to somebody's house for the holidays, your family, and can you fix my computer? I still get that. I'm like, no, I'm in tech. That's no keyboard person. That's not happening. What happens when other people want to ride on with your success? So you've come up and you've made a name with yourself, and you built your company, built your skills, whatever, and other people just want to show up and say, how did you do that? Show me how to do it. Because that's what I get, the overnight success. Well, Lynette, all of a sudden you're really popular and you know how to use this and you have a certain skill set. So just, I'll take you out to lunch and you just tell me what you did so I could do the same thing, right? So there's no free lunches. I had someone that, when the Google Plus platform first came out, I literally joined 4 hours after the private beta had opened up. Because a really good friend of mine in California, her husband's a developer over there. All the devs in Google got codes to give out. I'm like user number 60 or something, if there was such a thing in the Google Plus platform. Well, I had run across somebody else that started in the platform 1 week after me. And he heckled me from the stage, and he sent me emails afterwards and followed up. He goes, you know, Lynette, if I had just joined when you did, I would have 1.5 million followers and all this money and fame. And I'm like, I didn't get $1 a person. Like, well, now I'm up to $10 a person. I'd like $10 a follower. Like, that's what I'd like to get paid. You know, this perception of fame, this perception of money and success, just because of the numbers, is kind of gone. But he was extremely bitter that if only he had joined a week before me, he would have all the followers and success and pseudo fame that I did, and he's got 166 followers, right, versus my 1.5 million. And I'm like, but you don't have all the other stuff. You can't come on this iceberg with me. I'm not giving you a ride. I'm not going to promote your stuff or teach you my tricks, if there are such a thing, because you don't have the 25 years of experience that it took me to show up on the Google Plus platform to become successful. I didn't buy my way in. I didn't, you know, there's none of that. It took 25 or 22 years at that point of experience to show up one day and have success. So that's the other thing too, is when you go to do something, price your products. I've been going through clients with this. They don't know how to price their products, because you're not just pricing a product, you're putting your experience with it. So what's that 90% that you could charge for? What's that 90% that makes you different, that can rise above? And like I said, it's not always people looking for a free ride. Sometimes they're just looking to have a party with you. So you kind of have to pay it forward, I feel, and help those that you can and those that appreciate it, and those that can't, it's just got to get let go. So those are my thoughts and my experience on the topic. So I want to thank you all very much, and if you have any questions later, specifically about Google+, I will take questions, because today was not my normal talk. I always do like the 6 points of how to be a marketer in Google+ and not look like an idiot. Well, that's all in my head. That's not really what I wanted to share today, so thank you very much.
Sorry, we have 3 minutes for questions.
Questions, and they could be Google+ oriented, I'll just say that. Questions, no questions? We're good. Okay, yeah. Hi.
Hi. If you were giving advice to some small business owner who's just starting on Google+, what's the first thing that they should do when they get on the platform?
Okay, so her question was, if you were a small business owner just getting started on the platform, what would you do? The first thing I would say is actually go to your strengths, and this is why I say, and this is where this idea of the iceberg came from. What are you already strong at? And what do you want? So what are you strong at? What's your 90%? And what's the 10% that you want people to know about you? If you are a small business owner and you are you're a photographer, because I hear the click over here, right? So that's your strength. So you're going to go forward with your best foot forward. You're going to take all of your very best experience, your very best photographs, your very best work, and that's what you're going to put on the platform. I always recommend that you take the tip of the iceberg, the 10%, and that's what belongs on the platform. That's perception you want people to have of you. I do see people, small businesses, that they feel they're supposed to have something out online, or I haven't tweeted today, or I haven't posted a Google Plus update, so I should just find any old crap and throw it out there. You want people to know the very best about you, and the Google Plus platform, above all else, is where you have to publish your very, very best content. Because it's not just Google Plus that you're worried about. Google Plus is the IV that goes into the entire ecosystem of Google and the servers and the internet and search and everything else. So take time to think about how you want people to perceive you, the best work that you can do, and put that out there. On a more technical aspect of it, I always say go out there, participate in communities, circle people, that's the following, the friending, be active. There is no dump and runs allowed in Google+, because I say no dump and runs. You cannot dump a link, dump content, and leave. Peek your head around the corner saying there's nobody here, it's a ghost town, because I have physically punched people for saying that in my presence. In the arm, though. I'm not really that violent. But you have to participate with the people there. Google Plus is a people network, above all else. Everything you do in the platform is available 100% of the time for the search engines to pick up and such. So your best bet is to put your very best content out there and to connect with the very best people that you can connect with.
Yeah.
The strength that comes in Google Plus is your social graph by far. You can put the meaning of life and the cure to cancer out there, but if you're not connected to other people, it's not going to make any dent whatsoever. So you have to connect to the people as well. In the book that I wrote, I actually recommend that you sit down once a week if possible, and as a small business, follow at least 25 people a week and comment on, I forget the numbers to be exact, but comment on other people's information, and +1, which is their version of liking other people's content. Sit down and do it once a week when you're watching like movies or whatever. But you have to be consistent about it, because Google Plus has a long tail. The more you interact and the more content you put out there, the more you're going to pick up steam going down the line.
It's hard in this area, though, because there's not that many of us who play actively on it. So do you find that in New Jersey or specifically in Mercer County, there are a lot of small businesses that are on it?
Yeah, because I see a lot of them in the room that are actually.
Okay, good.
There are. But there's also, with Google Plus, I'll say this, you have two ways of playing in that playground, right? Globally or local. Because Google Plus Local has taken over places. So if you are a local business, brick and mortar, you have that kind of physical thing, you really need to use the platform in a hyper-local way. And a lot of it is reaching out to people, reviewing, interacting with them, commenting on things that they've left for you on your business location and things like that. But it is imperative, I think, that you connect with the people that are local as well, too. And because there's a subset of the Google search engine that exists in there, you can search for, hairdressers, Princeton, New Jersey, like whatever you want to search for, it works kind of the same. If you don't find them in the system, you'll find them somehow connected, because all of the products in Google, for better or for worse, I won't get into that issue, are connected through this layer of the plus layer. So even if they're on maps, even if they're in the reviews, even if they're using Google Shopping, if their businesses, it's all connected now. So local actually is the fastest growing piece of Google Plus that I've seen by far.
Thanks.
All right, we'll wrap it there. Thanks again. Lynette, are you coming out to Woodbury's?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so yeah, if you want to talk to Lynette more, ask her more questions, come out to Woodbury's with us. We just have a few minutes left. We're going to go straight to open mic.